I'm gonna go to every road game no matter what, like whether I'm playing or not.
Just moments ago, breaking news shook the basketball world. CaitlinClark, the unstoppable force who has taken the WNBA by storm, has allegedly decided to walk away from the game entirely. And this sudden move comes after a shocking incident that no one saw coming. Was it brewing tension in the locker room, mounting pressure from critics, or a deeply personal turning point? Fans are stunned, teammates are speechless, and the league is reeling as we try to uncover the real reason behind Clark's jaw-dropping decision. The earthquake this would create in the WNBA cannot be overstated. If she leaves, the aftershocks would ripple from Indianapolis to every corner of the sporting world, shattering not just the Indiana fever but the commercial foundation the league has built, leaving millions in disbelief and heartbreak. Even the brightest stars sometimes reach a point where the glare becomes too much, and at just 22 years old, wearing her now iconic number 22 jersey, Clark is far more than a player. She is the Fever's lifeline, their centerpiece, their reason to dream again. Since the WNBA tipped off in 1997, few have redefined the sport like she has in her rookie season, putting up numbers that sound like a seasoned veteran: 19 points, 8.4 assists, and 5.7 rebounds per game. But numbers can only tell part of the story. Because in 2024, Clark dragged the Fever out of a 7-year playoff drought, returning them to the postseason for the first time since 2016, and her impact can't be measured by a scoreboard alone. Off the court, what she's done may be even more staggering, as from the moment Indiana announced her as their top draft pick, ticket sales exploded not by a modest amount, but by over 400%, a surge so powerful that the Fever had to abandon smaller venues entirely, and game after game, Gainbridge Fieldhouse was packed to capacity, something once rare, while television audiences that had hovered in the hundreds of thousands suddenly rocketed past the million mark whenever Clark took the floor. With some matchups even soaring above 2 million viewers, numbers the women's game had never reached before, flipping the WNBA into not just a sports league, but a cultural event. And corporate America noticed too, flooding in sponsorship deals tailored specifically to harness Clark's magnetic marketability. Far beyond the modest partnerships women's sports had been accustomed to, they were major revenue streams, entirely new financial lifelines that hadn't existed before Clark arrived in Indiana. And in less than a single season, she accomplished what decades of marketing campaigns couldn't, transforming the WNBA into appointment viewing, lifting not just the Fever, but the entire league onto a bigger stage and altering its economic DNA, all in a matter of months, proving that sometimes one player doesn't just change the game, she changes the game's place in the world. Yet behind this meteoric rise lies the unseen pressure that may have pushed Caitlin to the breaking point, a force that could threaten to rewrite her legacy. Because the surge she's created in the WNBA isn't confined to one team. It has rewritten the league's very pulse, with television ratings soaring, merchandise shattering records, and media outlets that once barely mentioned the W now devoting prime coverage to every twist and turn, turning Clark into a global sports icon almost overnight. And that's why whispers of her potential departure feel less like speculation and more like a looming earthquake, fueled by the invisible weight that comes with meteoric success. For Clark, moving from the relative freedom of college basketball to the high-stakes world of the WNBA hasn't just meant tougher opponents on the court. It's also meant navigating a business machine full of rules and limits most fans never see, because despite the seismic impact she's had, the league still operates under a salary cap that feels stuck in another era, with the maximum any player can earn hovering around $250,000 per year, a number that pales compared to the millions her marketability likely brings in for the league. And her rookie contract, standard under WNBA guidelines, binds her to the Indiana Fever through team options and restricted free agency clauses designed to protect teams but which severely limit player mobility. So while athletes in other leagues can respond to dissatisfaction with trades, free agency, or renegotiations, Clark has far fewer options, and even if she felt trapped or undervalued, the very rules meant to preserve competitive balance lock her into a situation she can't easily change, all set by a collective bargaining agreement negotiated long before she arrived and long before anyone realized how much one player could transform the league's commercial fortunes. The financial rules put in place years ago no longer match the reality of what a high-profile star like CaitlinClark brings to the WNBA. And behind the cheers, sold-out arenas, and record TV numbers lies a quiet, complicated tension, a gap between her impact and what the league, under its current rules, can give back. And that gap isn't just about money. It's about freedom, recognition, and how value in women's sports is evolving. So now the question looms, is Caitlin ready to challenge the very system that built her fame? Or walk away entirely? Because for athletes whose worth far exceeds their paycheck, the game becomes as much about contracts as competition and legal. Experts note that this is often the hidden struggle behind sports' biggest headlines, the moment when a player's market impact explodes beyond the limits of a league's salary structure. And in the WNBA, where the top salary is far below what Clark generates through ticket sales, TV deals, and sponsorships, the mismatch is obvious, especially when her revenue impact surpasses that of her teammates, yet she remains bound by the same pay scale as everyone else. For Clark, whose every move on the court is watched by millions and whose jersey sales dominate the league, this imbalance is more than just a number. It's a constant reminder that the system wasn't built for someone like her. And on top of that, professional basketball doesn't just tire the body, it drains the mind, because Clark faces a level of scrutiny rarely seen in women's sports, with every pass, shot, and comment dissected by analysts, blown up on social media, and debated by strangers. And that spotlight doesn't dim when the game ends but follows her everywhere, making sustained peak performance exhausting even for the best. Which is why whispers of other paths have started to surface, pointing to opportunities overseas where pay is higher, travel is easier, and the cameras are less intrusive. Because in Europe, the women's basketball scene, including top clubs in Turkey, Russia, and Spain, has long attracted elite players with bigger salaries, often far above the WNBA maximum, along with housing, transportation, and perks that make life on the road much more manageable. The competition is fierce, arenas are packed, and the quality of life can be much better overseas. With Australia's Women's National Basketball League standing out as a rising option that offers competitive pay, world-class facilities, and a season that fits perfectly into the WNBA's off-season. So for players like Clark, it's not just a way out, it's a chance to keep playing at the highest level while enjoying a type of professional freedom the WNBA can't fully provide. But what happens when that freedom starts to feel like a cage? Stay with us, because the truth is more shocking than you think. When the face of the league feels trapped, the numbers tell a story that no amount of cheers can change, as Clark's impact on the WNBA's growth in ticket sales, TV ratings, and sponsorship deals makes her annual worth stretch into the millions. And while outside endorsements boost her income, the league she has transformed still pays her only a fraction of that value, a contradiction that eats away at her every day. And she may not be the first WNBA star to run into this pay gap, but she is the first to pull the entire league into the national spotlight while earning a salary that barely reflects the scale of her influence. Fans roar her name in sold-out arenas, cameras track her every move, and broadcasters build entire storylines around her. Yet behind the scenes, she's locked into a system that thrives on her image while refusing to truly invest in her future. And that's what hurts the most, not just the money, but the lack of control. As her rookie contract from 2024 wasn't written with leverage in mind, like every WNBA rookie deal, it's a cage disguised as an opportunity, with team options keeping her tied to the franchise, restricted free agency blocking her from testing her value, and a framework carefully designed to limit player movement. So even if Clark wanted change, her hands are tied. She can't force a trade, can't renegotiate for what she's worth, and certainly can't chase a bigger payday elsewhere. Not in a league where freedom isn't a right but a privilege for a few, as the collective bargaining agreement setting these rules was inked long before Clark became the most marketable athlete in women's basketball and proved one player could change the economics of an entire sport, leaving her bound by outdated terms that undervalue her and ignore the new reality she created. While the WNBA cashes in on the Clark effect with shattered attendance records, skyrocketing merchandise sales, and booming sponsorship revenue, and Yet, the woman at the center of it all remains trapped by a deal that gives her none of the flexibility, reward, or control her male counterparts in other leagues enjoy. A gap legal analysts call common in women's sports, but Clark's case isn't common, it's unprecedented. Because she's not just a star player, she's the brand, the story, and the profit margin, and as she begins to understand the full weight of that reality, one question grows louder in her mind. Why should the brightest talent in the game stay silent while everyone else gets paid? And how did a single question ignite a battle far bigger than basketball, a struggle that goes beyond points and stats, into the pressure of being more than a player? Because by the summer of 2025, CaitlinClark was no longer just the Indiana Fever star. She had become their identity, her name shorthand for the WNBA's resurgence, her image a constant presence in commercials, interviews, and highlight reels. But the spotlight, dazzling from the outside, carried a heat few could endure, and though her knowledge of the game and natural command on the court hinted at a future in coaching where her vision could shape teams without the relentless demands of playing, right now she was still in uniform, expected not only to perform at an elite level, but also to serve as the league's ambassador, spokesperson, and symbol of progress, carrying an entire movement on her shoulders. With that role came pressures no stat sheet could capture, as every public comment was dissected, every performance tied to the WNBA's bigger story, and every off day met with headlines speculating on her health, her happiness, or her future, turning Clark's experience into a constant test of mental endurance that rarely let her simply enjoy the game she loved. While inside the Fever organization, the change had been swift and dramatic, with ticket offices, media teams, and sponsorship departments all reorganizing around the Clark era. And though it revitalized the franchise, it also shifted team dynamics in subtle and sometimes uncomfortable ways, because when one player becomes the center of an entire operation, it can strain relationships with teammates, coaches, and even the front office, leaving Clark with lingering questions. Did the Fever's leadership share her long-term vision? Did the coaching staff know how to manage not just her minutes but her mental load? Was the organization truly built to support someone in her unique position? Or was it simply designed to maximize the benefits of her fame? And as her individual accolades grew, the balance between her personal spotlight and the team's collective identity became increasingly difficult to maintain. Every sold-out arena, every spike in TV ratings, every sponsorship announcement reminded Clark that she wasn't just part of the Fever, she was the Fever. And leading under those conditions required more than skill, demanding political savvy, emotional intelligence, and a level of organizational support that, in her eyes, didn't always match the weight of what she was being asked to carry. And slowly she began to wonder if staying in this role meant sacrificing too much of herself for the sake of the game. Realizing that league policies, contract structures, and decision-making processes weren't just abstract rules but daily realities shaping her career, her income, and her sense of control, and increasingly those realities didn't align with her vision for her future, because Clark understood the business side of the WNBA in a way few rookies ever do, seeing how leadership set the tone, how strategic decisions determine player opportunities, and how little room there was for elite athletes to shape their own paths. And staying in that system meant playing by rules she hadn't written, rules that in her mind weren't evolving fast enough to match the sport's growth or her ambitions. While outside the WNBA, women's sports were becoming more visible, supported, and financially viable, with new sponsorships pouring in, leagues expanding globally, and media coverage reaching audiences once thought unreachable, giving players like Clark real alternatives. Through social media, Clark had built an audience in the millions, followers who didn't just watch her games but tracked every move, every word, every moment, giving her a kind of power few athletes had, allowing her to launch her own projects, collaborate directly with brands, or step into entirely new arenas without asking permission from the league. And for the first time, a WNBA player didn't need the WNBA to stay relevant, while corporate America noticed too, offering endorsement deals that often exceeded her player salary. From shoes and apparel to tech and lifestyle campaigns, giving her not just financial security but creative freedom, enough to shape a career on her own terms, free from outdated salary caps and rigid contracts. Yet this wasn't just about money. Because carrying the weight of an entire sport's expectations pressed into every corner of her life, with every appearance, interview, and headline reminding her she represented not only herself but the future of women's basketball. A responsibility that could be both thrilling and suffocating. For Clark, the question was becoming impossible to ignore. If the world beyond the WNBA offered more freedom, reward, and control, why keep playing a game where she had so much to lose and not enough to gain? And could the truth behind her next move change everything we thought we knew about her legacy? Because by mid-2025, CaitlinClark was far more than a basketball player. She was the living symbol of women's basketball's rise, and every game she played, every word she spoke, every public move she made was seen as a reflection of the sport's health and future, her presence electrifying on the court but also distorting how the league was viewed. So when she soared, the sport thrived. And when she stumbled even slightly, questions swirled. Because being the face of a movement meant obligations far beyond the three-point line. Corporate events, sponsorship shoots, youth clinics, charity galas, halftime interviews, endless autograph sessions, and cameras following her everywhere from marinas to airports, restaurants, and family gatherings, with every decision, professional or personal, dissected online in minutes. And for an athlete who wanted time to refine her craft and live away from the noise, the weight of those expectations was crushing. Family was playing a bigger role in her thoughts, with holidays missed, celebrations skipped, and long stretches away from the people who kept her grounded, while friends, mentors, and her close support network reminded her that happiness wasn't just about championships or MVP trophies, but also about balance, peace, and having space to grow outside the game. Yet the business side of things was just as pressing, because WNBA contracts binding, restrictive, and modest compared to her market value clashed with the revenue she brought in for the league, and legal analysts openly questioned whether the system could handle pressure from athletes like Clark, whose brand power far outpaced the salary cap, especially as her endorsements already earned her more than her playing income, and that gap kept growing. Shoe deals, media projects, and creative partnerships weren't just about money, they gave her control. Beyond basketball, opportunities in tech, media, and business were calling. Startups in sports analytics, women's health, and performance tech saw her as a natural partner. Her deep understanding of the game and credibility with fans made her valuable in boardrooms as much as on the court. Entertainment executives pitched TV and documentary projects, seeing her as the voice of a new era in women's sports. Privately, some close to Clark wondered if the real danger wasn't her leaving, but the WNBA failing to evolve. Losing her would be far more than losing a superstar. It would signal that the league couldn't hold on to the very talents it had built its future around. So, what do you think truly pushed Clark to step away? Pressure, politics, or something even deeper? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more WNBA stories.